Last week, following the whole Carlos Correa Giants debacle and fallout, Correa would do his physical for the Mets, his newly signed team. A day went by and nothing was really reported on the matter, that is until Christmas Eve, when it was reported that the Mets now had a holdup with the star shortstop's physical, putting everything on hold for the time being. We all assumed the Correa physical issue was just a Giants thing, something that they either screwed up on or just decided last minute that they didn't want him. But no, it seems to be an actual issue considering the Mets are now questioning how healthy Correa really is. So there's a number of things at play here. For one, the Giants actually are the party that looks the best out of themselves, the Mets, and Correa's party. These big contracts north of 10 years in baseball have really gotten out of hand. They take these players, including Correa, into their 40s. I just don't necessarily know if that's the best way to go about giving out a deal to a big-time player, especially to one that has some potential injury issue that could really hurt the team big time in the future. Apparently, the issue the Giants saw during Correa's physical was in his right ankle. Now, for some context, Correa's never been put on the injured list or had any injury issues in the big leagues because of his ankle. He has been injured several times throughout his career so far, it's just never been an ankle issue, but rather a back issue, or the time he had neck stiffness, or the time he broke his rib, pretty much anything other than his ankle. So where did he even suffer this ankle injury, and why is it such a big deal right now? Well, it all started back in 2014 when Correa was a teenager in the lower levels of the minor leagues for the Astros, where he injured his ankle sliding into third base, going on to get under the knife where a plate would be surgically implanted. From that point forward, he's always worn an ankle guard while playing, and of course hasn't had any issue with that ankle. So what the hell is the holdup? Before I get any further, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Over 75% of my watch time has been from people who aren't subscribed, so hit that button along with the bell for post notifications. Okay, back to the video. Something I didn't previously talk about was a recent play Correa was involved in where he actually hurt that right ankle. It happened back in September when the Twins were taking on the Royals, and after attempting to steal second base, Correa would collide with the second baseman, who would tweak his right ankle. Correa immediately felt pain and started to grab that ankle. He ended up being fine overall, going on to say this after the game, quote, "He just hit my plate. I had surgery and he hit it. Just kind of felt numb, vibrating, so I was just waiting for it to calm down. It was a little scary, but when I moved, I knew it was good," end quote. It seems as if this could very well be what the Giants and now the Mets are concerned about. Would you really be comfortable committing to a guy like Correa for over 10 years? Someone who has a plate in his ankle? It just doesn't seem very ideal, and certainly not someone you can rely on to be healthy all that time. I get it. When you sign a player for that long, you're really signing him for what he'll do earlier in the contract rather than the last couple of years. But you just never truly know, especially when you have Correa's case. A guy who has always been pretty injury prone to begin with, and has a surgically repaired ankle that could at any time go wrong if a play goes wrong. This is why the Giants actually look smart in this case, and you can kind of understand where they're coming from when they took their deal off the table. The Mets, on the other hand, they don't look quite as smart. Mets owner Steve Cohen made the mistake of commenting on his decision to sign Correa once the Giants deal fell through, and this could end up hurting him if his deal now falls through with Correa. It is against the rules to comment on a contract before it has officially passed through the physicals and is complete, something the Correa contract was not. I'm not entirely sure what exactly could happen, but I just know the league doesn't really allow members of teams to discuss deals that aren't official. As far as the third party goes, in other words, Carlos Correa, that situation isn't looking so hot, and by situation, I mean him getting the money he wanted. It just doesn't seem smart to sign someone for that many years, which is why the Mets are likely trying to renegotiate and restructure the original deal that was agreed upon between the two sides. And what that would mean is likely less years and of course less money than his original 12-year deal worth $315 million. According to reports, however, Correa is not open to restructuring the length or financial terms of the contract. He wants the most money possible, and does not want to wind up doing what he had to do last offseason. If you don't remember, Correa wasn't necessarily planning on signing with the Twins. Certainly not for the contract that he did for just 3 years with an opt-out after one. He wanted the most money possible, but had to settle for a shorter term deal with a higher annual salary. So he still got a ton of money with the Twins in 2022, but he had every intent to opt out, and finally got that contract he was looking for this offseason leading into 2023. And he did. twice. First with the Giants before they backed out because of concerns with his ankle, and then the Mets, a team that is also now up in the air whether or not he'll actually end up playing there. So, what now? There have been recent reports that other teams are now in the running for Correa. Other reports saying that it's about a 55% chance he stays with the Mets, a number that was then reduced to 51%. I think the bottom line is that nobody truly knows what's going on. At least not us, the public. We don't know the full story because nobody is telling us the full story. We're just hearing mostly silence with bits and pieces of optimism regarding the Mets keeping Correa, but we just don't really know. At this point, anything could happen and I wouldn't even be that surprised. I can see him staying with the Mets, leaving the Mets and going back out on the free agent market. Who knows what's going to happen. But what would surprise me at this point is if Correa still got the contract he wanted, but with another team. That's the biggest issue with Correa right now. His whole plan this offseason was to get that big contract that would set him up for the rest of his career, rather than one like his short-term Twins deal. But that now all seems up in the air. It's hard to see any other team in the league now giving Correa a contract north of 10 years. Why would they? The Giants questioned his physical and ultimately said no. The Mets are now questioning it. I mean, if Correa goes back out on the market, why would anybody look at what's happening here and decide to commit to him for a decade plus? I can see a bunch of teams being interested in him. Carlos Correa will be playing baseball on a major league team. That's not the issue here. The issue is that the teams who go after Correa will probably not be willing to give him what he wants. They won't be willing to give him what he agreed to with San Francisco or what he agreed to with New York. And again, why would they? Seems to be too big of a risk, especially now that there's two organizations questioning his durability and health in the long term. You might think there's gotta be that one team that decides to bite, but I don't know who does. Correa's agent, Scott Boras, has been pretty adamant that nothing is wrong with his client, and that everything is fine. And honestly, maybe there isn't really anything wrong right now health-wise with Correa, which is kind of the point. There may not be anything wrong right now, but there very well could be something wrong in the future. Maybe teams like the Giants and Mets are getting smarter and realizing the repercussions that can come with these ridiculously long deals as time goes on. What you also have to wonder is if Scott Boras knew about Correa's ankle situation, which he must have, considering he's his agent, but if Boras knew about it, why didn't he seem to make this known to teams before they planned to give him a long-term deal? Teams clearly weren't really informed about it. I guess he hoped teams wouldn't notice it or just overlook it. I'm also curious as to how the Twins deal went through without seemingly any drama. He had to pass a physical for that contract, so why the lack of any ankle talk? I would assume because it was such a short-term deal, so they didn't really think much of it, compared to the Giants and Mets looking at 13 and 12 years, respectively. When you have to commit to a guy for that long, you're obviously going to take everything into account a little more, and that's why we're at where we're at. So, Carlos Correa needs this Mets situation to work out, because if it doesn't, it's hard to see him getting what he set out to get, which is a long-term contract. Let me know what you think happens. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.